Chapter 4 Occupying the Tomb. It was almost dark, and we arrived outside the villa door in a familiar way. There are still people living in the surrounding villas, but the lights are not very bright. In addition, the distance between each house is very far, which makes this villa even more eerie. If I had known this was the case, I would never have bought this house. It would be much more troublesome than the previous one. Yiheng took the lead in pushing the door open, and I followed behind. If he stops, I will stop. If he leaves, I will leave. After walking around for a few times, Yiheng stood in a corner of the villa, and told me that this was it. He asked me to stand here, and not move if there was any movement for a while. When he said I could run away, I would run out as fast as I could, but remember, you can't raise your head when running. You can only run looking at the ground. What he said was an imperial edict, but I was very scared in my heart. I asked him, is it safe for me to stand here like this? He pointed at his face and said, look at our current behavior. Do we look like paper figures that have not been burned at a funeral? Don't worry, just don't move. Only then did I understand why he made me draw like a ghost. I have the impression that I have heard relevant rumors. It is said that the night of New Year's Eve is actually a very special day in the year. Between the 2 years, there will be a moment when the yin and the yang are not connected. The glutinous rice cooked at that time is a kind of thing that is neither yin nor yang. Specifically speaking, I don't know much about it, but looking at the current situation, this glutinous rice can block my human touch, but I didn't have the time to think about it. I stood there concentrating and motionless, keeping my eyes on the door. I had to calculate the route I would take with my head down, otherwise I might bump into something. Yiheng arranged for me and turned around to go somewhere else. Neither of us brought any lighting equipment. Only the doorway could get some light, and the rest of the place was dark. I looked around and saw that he had entered the darkness and could not be found. I was breaking out in a cold sweat. I was so nervous, but to be honest, I am very curious about what I will see, but I am also afraid of what I will see. This feeling is very tangled. After standing for a while, I seemed to hear a knocking sound, a bit like a knock on the door, and a bit like a stamping of feet. Anyway, it made my hair stand on end. It seems that high profits are really accompanied by high risks, and they are also life-threatening. I kept scolding myself in my mind, saying that after doing this time, I would never do this again next time. Just as I was thinking about it, the sound of knocking disappeared. I held my breath and listened carefully, but there was no movement at all. I wanted to call Yiheng's name, but I was afraid of breaking any rules, so I could only wait patiently. Nearly a minute later, the sound of banging suddenly became violent. I heard Yiheng shout, telling me to run out the door. I lowered my head and ran out like I heard the starting gun, and my legs forgot to weaken. I admire my ability to maintain a keen sense of direction in such a crisis-ridden situation. He buried his head and ran out, quickly rushing out of the gate. Within a few seconds, Yiheng also ran out, hurriedly took out a bunch of firecrackers from his bag, lit them with a lighter and threw them through the door. Suddenly there was a loud sound of firecrackers, and the movement was really quite big. Before I could ask him what was going on, he asked me if there was something red on him. Please take it out quickly. I thought about it for a long time, and it seemed that only a few cards in my wallet were red. The more nervous I became, the less obedient my hands became. When I took out the card tremblingly, I had already wasted a lot of time. By this time, the sound of firecrackers had stopped, and the surrounding villas were also bustling with activity. There were actually quite a few people opening their windows to watch the excitement. Yiheng looked at the cards I took out, and chose one of the red ones. He said that, when he felt something was pulling him, he would use this card and throw it in the direction of the force pulling him. After that, he threw it towards the card. He spat on it and stuffed it into my hand. I had mixed feelings when I held the card in my hand. Why are his methods so disgusting? However, after the first few times, I have almost gotten used to it, and can only hold on to the card. At this moment, I don't know if it was a psychological effect, but I really felt like something was tugging on my hand. This is not an illusion, but a real feeling. I felt that this force wanted to drag me into the villa, but when I was nervous, I forgot that I still had the card in my hand. I just instinctively pulled my neck, and shouted to Yiheng for help. When he heard me shouting, he scolded me and told me to throw the card away. I just woke up from a dream, and threw the card in the direction that pulled me. Not to mention, that power disappeared instantly. I froze in place, pondering for a long time, not wanting to figure out whether what just happened was true. Seeing that I was fine, Yiheng breathed a sigh of relief and told me that we were both lucky today. People around us were sticking their heads out of the windows to watch the fun. The yang qi was relatively strong. Otherwise, I really don't know what my ending would be. Then he pulled me back to a bright place, and we squatted on the ground together to breathe heavily. I asked him what he was doing inside just now. Yiheng curled his lips and said that he found someone else's birthday and horoscopes and wrote them on a piece of paper. Then he found a place to pry open the floor and buried it inside. And what stunned me the most was that he said that the word was supposed to be written with a woman's menstrual blood, but he was anxious and couldn't find it, so he used a bitch's menstrual blood to deal with it. So it's really hard for both of us to come out today. It seems that I can eat this bowl of rice in the future. I heard him talking so much that he was like a tomb robber. In fact, how could I dare to continue doing it? So I asked him what he had just pulled me over. Yiheng shook his head and said that he didn't know what it was, but the red card had spit on it, and it was a little popular. To put it bluntly, he just lost his car to save his handsome man. Then, he continued to tell me that the birth date was buried in the villa, which was equivalent to changing the identity of the owner of the tomb, which meant canceling his household registration. So that thing was very angry. But if this happens, the person written on that piece of paper will probably suffer a bloody disaster, and at the very least his lifespan will be shortened. To be honest, his method is very damaging, but there is no other way. Everyone is like this. Neither of us is here to save all sentient beings. We are both here just for our own selfish interests. However, when I asked Yiheng who he was writing about, he refused to tell me. He just stated repeatedly that we are fine now, and that this matter is over. But after such a fuss, I don't know how the wealthy locals will react. However, unexpectedly, the next day, a wealthy local man took the initiative to find me again, and said he would raise the price to 300,000 yuan. Yiheng and I made the plan together and quickly agreed. Only when he turned around did he tell me that he seemed to have guessed what was going on. When he saw the rich man was so anxious, that tomb was prepared for him by a rich man. The painter's death, and it must have something to do with the rich man. This is called tomb occupation. Letting a person with the same birth date and horoscope die for you first must have been planned by some master. This is taking up the painter's life, and the dead female model is probably the same. Precisely because one wants to enjoy a yang life rather than a yin life, the coffin must be above the ground. When they let us in this time, they probably wanted to kill us and bury the painters and models who had died inside. The reason for doing this may be that the recent grievances between the painter and the female model have begun to become uncontrollable. Yiheng estimated that whenever this rich man found that the resentment in the house could not be suppressed, he would trick people into entering and burying him. When it's our turn, it might already be our second life. But now, after the destruction by the two of us, this carefully laid out villa is probably in ruins. If nothing else, the current lifespan of the rich man is the same as the lifespan of the person whose birth date is written in his horoscope. Although we made nearly 200,000 yuan just from handling this villa, it was also the first time that I had such close contact with these supernatural things. On the contrary, he comforted me and said that I might encounter such an awesome house once in my life, because there must be many masters. I felt at ease after hearing this. But after a few days of rest I was ready to take action again, except that Yiheng's moves are disgusting. It's actually not that unbearable when you think about it.